He looked at his 3 daughters and he says, I feel like I'm looking at 3 graves. And she said, no, there are 3 doors to Jannah. But I want to tell you this because these aren't cliches, I promise you. These are real life. These are people living their real life. And she recognized that this was her door to Jannah. A friend of mine I met probably about 5-6 years ago. Some of you may have heard me speak about her. She, at the time that I met her, told me her story. She said that many years ago she had a daughter, and when her daughter was around 3 years old, her teacher called and said, your daughter just stopped talking. She's not talking anymore, and we don't understand what's wrong. So she, that was strange. So she took her to the doctor, and eventually the doctor told her that her daughter had a rare genetic disorder called MPS. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with MPS, it is a disorder that has no cure. And what she was told, this mother was told, is that your daughter, who right now is perfectly healthy, is going to slowly lose all of her faculties until she dies as a child. She's going to lose all her faculties. Slowly. You're going to watch her do that. And there is nothing we can do. There's no cure. So she will lose her ability to do anything. And they said to her, don't expect that she will live past, I think, 13. And then she told me that she had another child, another daughter, and this daughter was tested, and the doctor told her that she also had MPS. And then she had a third daughter, and she also had MPS. And so this woman had 3 children, 3 daughters with MPS. Every single one of them, she was gonna have to watch them slowly die. Literally lose the ability even to swallow. To swallow. Do you know our ability to swallow? This is something that I was never thankful for it because I never even realized it. That your ability to swallow your saliva is a ni'mah. It's a blessing. Because when you can't swallow your saliva, you choke on it. It goes in your lungs. She was actually having to suction them because they couldn't swallow their own saliva properly. So it was making them choke. Then she had a 4th child with severe autism. Now, why do I tell this story? It isn't to tell you, that this is a really, really hard situation and then just leave. The reason I tell this story, and I'm just going to tell you that I've been to her home, I've witnessed how she lives. Basically, her children, her daughters grew into their teens, and by the time I met her, the 3 daughters were, I think they were all teenagers, and they were all completely bedridden. They were on machines. She literally didn't sleep. She was constantly caring for them. Her home was like a hospital. There was a section that was like a hospital. I also, recently, she lost 2 of them. One of them lived until she was 19. For 19 some years, she took care of this child and her other daughter. And now one of her daughters is still alive. May Allah make it easy for them. And the reason I tell this story is because of who this woman is. If I brought her here today, you would say she was the most, she's always smiling, subhanAllah. But the thing that really hit me is that one day she said to me, I'm drowning in gratitude. That's a direct quote. Now what amazed me is that she has a trial in her life that I couldn't even wrap my mind around. And yet she has this trial and she's saying she's drowning in gratitude. And to me, that's a sign of God. that the power of Iman to allow a person to not just withstand a little bit of rain, a little bit of snow, but a tsunami, and to not be broken by it, to not be destroyed by it, to the extent that you can actually show gratitude. And one of the things that she always says to me is that she always looks at those who have less than her. She says the thing about her is that she's always worried about the people who are suffering somewhere else worse than her. She doesn't look at her situation and say, why me? But she actually shows gratitude because she looks at those who have less than her. When she first got the diagnosis, there was something really powerful that shook me. And that is that her husband says to her, when he was looking at his 3 daughters after hearing this diagnosis, and you can imagine what that feels like as a father or as a mother. He looked at his 3 daughters and he says, I feel like I'm looking at 3 graves. And she said, no, there are 3 doors to Jannah. But I want to tell you this because these aren't cliches, I promise you. These are real life. These are people living their real life. And she recognized that this was her door to Jannah. But that's what happens to a heart when it is healthy. It is a completely different heart. And it doesn't mean you have to be a prophet or you have to be perfect. No, a regular person who takes care of their heart just as it is prescribed can become like that by the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.